What if I told you that in 752 AD, an emperor's personal physician discovered a root so powerful at killing pain that 1,200 years later, this compound never made it through the FDA approval pipeline, while during that same period, opioid-related deaths in America would eventually exceed 800,000. The plant is called Corydalis, known in traditional Chinese medicine as Hu Suo. It is a small woodland perennial with yellow flowers and gnarled tubers that has been used across East Asia for over 12 centuries. Today, we are going to trace the journey of this ancient root from a Tang Dynasty palace to a UC Irvine laboratory to the FDA's regulatory grey zone. Stick around, because in 2014, a research team at UC Irvine found compelling evidence supporting what ancient practitioners had long believed. And what happened next will make you question everything you thought you knew about pain medicine in America. Picture a small village in Anhui Province, China. On a kitchen shelf sits a ceramic jar. Nothing special to look at. Inside, small gnarled tubers. Unremarkable. But when the old woman who lives here wakes at night with her joints aching, she does not reach for a pill bottle. She brews a bitter tea from those tubers, just as her mother did, and her mother's mother before that. 12 centuries of quiet, consistent use. No marketing, no patents, no billion-dollar ad campaigns, just a ceramic jar passed down through generations. Those tubers are Corydalis, and for 1,200 years, families across East Asia passed down what many believed was nature's perfect design, a root placed in the soil long before any pharmaceutical company existed. The first known medical record of Corydalis appears in 752 AD, during China's Tang Dynasty. Emperor Xuanzong's personal physician documented it in the imperial pharmacopoeia as a powerful blood mover and pain reliever. For centuries after that, traditional Chinese medicine classified Corydalis as one of its most important herbs for treating pain. Practitioners prescribed it for headaches, menstrual cramps, abdominal pain, and the deep, aching pain of old injuries. And for all those centuries, nobody asked the obvious question: why does this root actually work? What is it doing inside the human body? That question would not be answered until the 1960s. In the 1960s, Chinese researchers finally cracked the code. They isolated a compound from Corydalis called dihydrocorybulbine, or DHP for short. Now here is where it gets fascinating. Most painkillers you have heard of, morphine, oxycodone, fentanyl, they all work by targeting what is called the mu-opioid receptor in your brain. That is the same receptor responsible for addiction, for tolerance, and for the withdrawal that keeps people trapped. DHP does something completely different. Think of DHP as a key that fits a lock no one even knew existed. The dopamine D2 receptor is kicked down the front door. DHP quietly slips in through the back. According to the research, similar pain relief, but without hijacking the addiction pathway. This was a significant finding. A compound from a 1,200-year-old plant working through an entirely different mechanism than anything modern medicine had produced. Researchers were intrigued. Preclinical and clinical studies began, And what they found was remarkable. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, Chinese clinical studies suggested what traditional practitioners had long believed. DHP showed promise for chronic pain. Patients reported significant relief, especially from inflammatory conditions, arthritis, and nerve pain. Compared to existing analgesics, early research suggested DHP held its own, not as immediately powerful as morphine in acute settings, but for the kind of long-term, grinding, chronic pain that millions of people live with every day. Early results were encouraging. International researchers took notice. Papers were published. Interest was growing. It seemed like the world was finally ready to take Corydalis seriously. But then, something happened that would bury this research for decades. In 1970, President Nixon signed the Controlled Substances Act into law. The stated purpose was to combat drug abuse in America. And on paper, it made sense. Dangerous drugs needed regulation. But here is what most people do not know. When the DEA began classifying substances, they cast an enormous net. Entire plant families were swept up in the regulations. And Corydalis species, a plant that had been used safely for over 1,000 years, was classified alongside genuinely dangerous drugs. No distinction was made between the whole plant and isolated compounds. No consideration for the 12 centuries of documented safe use. No acknowledgement that DHP works through a completely different pathway than addictive opioids. It was a blanket classification, one stroke of a pen, and a 1,200-year-old medicine was effectively pushed to the margins of American healthcare. Now, you might be thinking, okay, maybe it was an honest mistake. Maybe the regulators just did not have enough information at the time. And that is a fair question. But when you follow the money, the picture changes dramatically. The pharmaceutical industry spends $4.7 billion every single year on lobbying in the United States. That is more than any other industry, more than oil, more than defense, more than tech. And there is a very simple reason for that. You cannot patent a plant. If Corydalis grows in the wild, if anyone can harvest it, dry it, and brew a tea that helps with chronic pain, there is no money in that. There is no $30 a pill prescription. There is no recurring revenue, but a synthetic opioid. Now that you can patent, that you can market, that you can build a billion-dollar empire around. And there is another factor worth examining. According to public records and federal audits, some officials involved in drug regulation have later taken positions in the pharmaceutical industry. This pattern has been discussed in congressional hearings and raises important questions about structural incentives. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think. Because what happened next is not just about money anymore. It is about lives. Imagine you are 63 years old. Chronic back pain wakes you at 3 a.m. every single night. You have tried everything. Physical therapy, over-the-counter pills. Nothing works. So your doctor writes you a prescription, OxyContin, and it works. For the first time in years, you sleep through the night. But after 6 months, you need a higher dose. After a year, you cannot stop taking it even if you wanted to. You did not do anything wrong. You just wanted the pain to go away. But the system was designed to turn you into a customer for life. Since 1999, opioid overdoses have killed more than 800,000 Americans. That is more than every American war death since World War II combined. And the drug at the center of this crisis, OxyContin, according to court documents and federal settlements, was marketed by Purdue Pharma, with claims about its safety profile that were later found to be misleading. Think of it as choosing between a sledgehammer and a scalpel. Both can remove a nail from a wall, but one of them destroys everything around it. Opioids are the sledgehammer. They stop the pain, but they destroy lives in the process. So here is the question that should keep you up at night. What if there was a route that did the same job without the addiction, without the withdrawal, without the funeral? In 2014, a team at UC Irvine answered that question. A research team at the University of California, Irvine, did not expect much. They were simply retesting a compound from Corydalis that Chinese scientists had identified back in the 1960s. DHP, dihydrocorybulbine. The results stunned them. In preclinical models, DHP reduced chronic inflammatory pain at levels comparable to morphine. But unlike morphine, the subjects showed zero signs of tolerance, zero withdrawal, zero addictive behavior. Keep in mind, these are preclinical results that still need large-scale human clinical trials to confirm. The mechanism was exactly what those 1960s researchers had discovered. DHP targets the dopamine D2 receptor, a completely separate pathway from the one that makes opioids so devastatingly addictive. Let me put this in perspective based on available research. Morphine, effective for pain, but addictive, builds tolerance, severe withdrawal, and linked to tens of thousands of deaths every year. OxyContin, effective for pain, highly addictive, builds tolerance, and connected to the broader opioid crisis. DHP from Corydalis showed promise for chronic pain in preclinical studies, with no observed addictive properties, no tolerance, no withdrawal, and no recorded deaths in 1,200 years of traditional use. The UC Irvine team published their findings. They called DHP a promising lead for non-addictive pain management. A promising lead. That is science speak for this could change everything. And then nothing. No one funded the next clinical trial. No pharmaceutical company stepped up. No government agency pushed it forward. For 12 years, from 2014 to today, that promising lead has sat in a journal, gathering dust. To understand why, you have to understand how the system actually works. According to public disclosures and federal audits, some FDA advisory committee members have disclosed financial relationships with pharmaceutical companies. This has been discussed in congressional hearings and is part of the public record. The drug approval process in America structurally favors patentable compounds. If a substance cannot be patented, there is no financial incentive to fund the multi-million-dollar clinical trials required for FDA approval. Natural compounds like DHP fall into a dead zone, too effective to ignore, too unprofitable to pursue. And so the cycle continues. The plant stays banned, the research stays unfunded, and the pharmaceutical alternatives stay on the shelf. So let us take a step back and look at what we actually know. We have 1,200 years of documented traditional use across East Asia. We have decades of Chinese clinical studies showing real results. We have a peer-reviewed 2014 study from one of America's top research universities confirming that DHP works for chronic pain without addiction. And we have 0 recorded deaths from Corydalis in over a millennium of use. The case for independent clinical trials is not just strong, it is overwhelming. What is missing is not evidence. What is missing is the political will to challenge a system that profits from the status quo. And nowhere is that more obvious than in the FDA's own record. The FDA has approved drugs that were later found to have serious side effects, some of which were withdrawn from the market after significant harm. In some cases, manufacturers faced legal consequences for misrepresenting safety data, yet a plant used traditionally for 1,200 years, supported by promising preclinical research from UC Irvine, still lacks the funding for full clinical trials. Think of the FDA approval process as a gate with a very specific key. If your compound can be patented and generate return on investment, the path forward exists. If it cannot, the gate stays closed. The system creates structural challenges for unpatentable, natural compounds. And that is worth examining. So the question becomes, what can you actually do about it? Here is what most videos on this topic will not tell you. Yes, the system is broken, but Corydalis is not completely out of reach. Let me walk you through what you need to know. First, legal status. In the United States, Corydalis is available as a dietary supplement. It falls into a legal gray area. Not FDA approved as a drug, but not banned for sale as a supplement either. Availability varies by state, so check your local regulations. Second, forms. Corydalis is traditionally available in several forms, including dried root powder, standardized capsule extracts, and liquid tinctures. Dosage varies widely and should always be discussed with a qualified healthcare provider or licensed TCM practitioner. Third, combinations. Traditional Chinese medicine has historically paired Corydalis with other herbs such as turmeric and white willow bark. Again, consult a professional before combining any supplements. Fourth, where to find it. Look for reputable herbal suppliers with third-party testing and consider consulting a licensed TCM practitioner who can guide you on quality and sourcing. Whether you see Corydalis as ancient medicine or a forgotten blessing, one thing is worth noting. The research so far is promising, and it deserves further investigation. Now, I need to be very clear about something. This is educational content, not medical advice. Always consult your healthcare provider before starting any new supplement. Do not replace prescribed medication without medical supervision. And if you are pregnant, nursing, or taking blood thinners, talk to your doctor first. Your health is your responsibility, but you deserve to know all of your options. 1,200 years ago, an emperor's physician documented it. In 2014, UC Irvine found compelling evidence. And today, full clinical trials are still unfunded. Ancient documented, modern researched. The funding gap left it behind. But here is what the system did not count on. You. If you believe that plants like Corydalis deserve fair and independent research, share this video so more people can learn about this research. If someone you care about is dealing with chronic pain and wants to explore all available options, send them this video. Knowledge is power, and if you want to learn how to grow your own medicine right in your own backyard, subscribe and hit that notification bell, because we are just getting started. Next video, I will show you exactly how to grow Corydalis at home, Zone 4 through Zone 9, step by step. Until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and never stop asking questions, never stop learning, and never stop advocating for more research into the gifts that nature has provided.